I'm so sorry. I had talked
That's
all
okay.
about that recording and then I didn't turn it on. So the recording has just been turned
Done.
on, and
Done.
now I can stop interrupting Celine. Thank you so much for your patience.
Okay, so I'll go again. I'm Celine. I'm from Northern Ireland, Fermanagh, and I'm just when I was hearing you introducing, I'm so grateful for this community. Um, and geez, to think that somebody has started this, like, because possibly about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was in the depths of despair, seeing what I was seeing, while all around me nobody was seeing it. And having nobody to talk to about it, having no access even to my emotions about it, like it just block, to the extent that I seriously thought about taking my life. And I don't know how or where I think Michael Dowd. I found Michael Dowd first, and from Michael Dowd I heard Dean speak, and then I went after Dean. Sorry, Dean. I went after you, and I swear it's been such a lifesaver and such an opener to be a part of that your living resilience group. I mean, there's every day I'm in it. I'm listening to another podcast. I'm listening to another conversation. I'm a part of your community of practice. The book, reading the book. There's a little bit of me thinks I've gone a bit nutty, but to the outside world or to my friends, to my so-called friends and my family, I have, because I had left them a long time ago to really ponder these big, deep questions that nobody else wants to ponder. But I feel so supported pondering these and coming to terms with these and feeling the emotions of these within this framework that you have created. That your book has been so powerful to me, so powerful. So here I am. I'm back again for this, and I'll be back again tomorrow morning to do I can't remember which of the ones it is, but it's very powerful. It's very powerful. I don't feel so alone. There's just so much. There's so much to learn, but like I think that my biggest thing is my grief, my complete disillusionment and my complete shock and horror that we're in this place and most people don't give a damn. Most people don't want to wake up, and I can't make them. I'm so shocked about that. I'm so, like, with our governments, our corporations, to see everything happening and to see that people don't seem to yet want to wake up. It grieves me horrendously. It scares me horrendously. And yet I've got a place to share it, and that makes it. I mean, that's all I can do. So I'm grateful to be here, and thank you guys for listening.
Celine, thank you. Eva Mary, would you check in?
Yes, I will check in. Can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, I'm in a sort of different position because I'm in my 70s, and since being in my 20s, I've been an activist and I've seen what was happening and I kind of saw it coming. And then I was a trained therapist who worked in psychiatric hospitals many years ago. And I used to say, if I wasn't working in one, I'd be in one because the whole world is mad. Well, I said that 50 years ago. And so none of this is a shock to me. I've kind of seen it coming. But I still absolutely agree with Celine that groups of people supporting each other. I'm very involved with deep adaptation. I run something called Earth Listening every week. I'm now involved with something called Deep Transformational Network, Jeremy Lent's work, and I'm very involved with that. I just completed my third book called Choosing the Thriving Life Paradigm, which is really just my life story, but with the slant on, there's two paradigms we're playing with. There's a power over, which is how most people live and how the Western world lives. And then there's the way the indigenous people have always lived, or sensitives and those of us who came in kind of with a different head on, God knows where it came from. We've been trying to live like that and then wondering why we don't fit in. And that we can't fit in because it's a different paradigm and it's a different view. So I'm actually feeling, because I've got all these online things, and so instead of getting older and more lonely, I've got older and more involved because I sit here in my comfy chair and everything, you know, I'm involved with everything. So it's an interesting dilemma because I love the technology. I don't know what my life would be like without the technology. And yet the technology is part of the paradigm and not the thriving life. So yeah, so anyway, but I'm on here because I met Dean some time ago. Dean helped me do something and I can't even remember what. And it sounded like a nice thing to do. And I'm always interested, as a holistic life coach, I'm always interested in turning things around. So I loved what you said, Dean, about, yes, it's crazy, but maybe it's an opportunity for something. And I love that. That's right up my street. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Emma Mary. It's really good to have you here. Christina, would you go?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm calling in from Cork in Ireland. To answer your question, why am I here? I suppose I don't know how I ended up at Living Resilience, to be honest. I think it was, I know I did a course with Living Resilience, I think it was, but I think it was through David Loy at some point, maybe about 2 years ago, is it?
Yeah. That was a meditation course.
That's right.
That's
right.
Actually, it was a book group, but it was also based on the meditative practices that, of course, David Loy employs. So that's where you're familiar. That's where you're familiar.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess I'm interested in waking up. Whilst I can say I have knowledge of the climate emergency, I can't say that I have actually woken up myself. And perhaps by identifying with the collapse of the planet, I will be actually able to wake up to that and perhaps wake up in other ways as well. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But I also don't feel alone. I don't have a sense of aloneness. Maybe that's because I haven't woken up. But I certainly don't feel alone. And I think it's lovely to be part of this community and speaking to other people that have woken up, and I just want to learn from them and see how that goes.
Beautiful.
That
Thank you. I love the reminder from a couple of years ago. Thank you. That was good.
Yeah, sorry. I should have remembered that, but I have a terrible memory.
Yeah, me too. Carol, would you check in with us?
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada. So nice to see everybody here. And why am I here? I was here last week, and I guess I related to what everybody's saying. Maybe that's why. And it's kind of neat to be on with people around the world that have the same feelings, whereas I'm isolated, it feels, in my own area and community, because there's nobody wants to talk about this. And if you do happen to bring it up, they're they get scared, I think, and they don't want to go there, and you don't want to depress them, even your own family and things like that. So it's kind of nice to be able to once in a while check in with other people. I liked what a couple of people said, that someone referenced that feel kind of isolated and becoming resilient. I think can we become resilient when we're faced with this predicament of, like Dean said, extinction of our species. Who can be resilient to that, really? But it's a grieving process I feel I'm going through, and it is what it is. And maybe I'm here to learn or to take comfort from others that are learning some strategies to have a softer landing on some of this stuff. So I wanted to say, I don't know where this came from, but you were talking about waking up or something, but there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but most people are asleep dreaming they are awake. I don't know if it's Carl Jung that said it or some Russian fellow, but anyway, I think that's kind of true, that's why why people can't deal with it, and it's a coping strategy. So thanks.
Thank you. Man, we could spend hours just on that last piece thing. Thank you. And we're going to get going because our time is rapidly moving along here. Thank you all for checking in, and thank you all for being here. And you said a couple of different terms, Emma Mary, when you checked in. You mentioned sensitives, or I would also say empaths, and there are different ways that people can consider themselves or describe what might have them have made the choices that each of us was talking about when we checked in. Something had us be aware that something's going on, something that's at a scale that is not normal. It is not okay. Something is off. We are off as a species, and our expressions at every level of that species, down to the most intimate and individual expressions. Something is off. And there are a number of ways to describe that sensitivity and that articulation. And it seems like I now am looking at a screen full of people who are quite able to discern in your own system when you're off, when you're have been knocked out of your sense of center, that home, that place you would go to when you're in a pivotal moment and a very important choice point in your life, the place you go to choose, to fully sense what's true for you. Is that making sense what I'm saying? If I could call that the center, it's, some people also call it the one seat. In certain contemplative traditions, they can call that the one seat for their attention. And I'm going to be talking quite a bit about that in this segment. But remember, before my many starts and stops at the beginning of this call, I was kind of midstream in both giving you some historical context of where this work come from, but then also what was this first Saturday that happened last Saturday? What did we talk about? I had just gotten to the place where I was going to recap what we talked about there, because it turns out that these 4 Saturdays are an introduction to yes, to my body of work, yes, to things that are range from our Safe Circle online support calls to a number of different offerings in terms of coaching, a number of different special guest events that are going to be happening on quite a regular basis, online courses, and then these communities of practice that we also have. What's behind all of that is an orientation to what's going on in these times, these troubled times. And last week was what a guy named Paul Chafurka, some people who've been around long enough in the collapse-aware community have likely heard of this guy, Paul Chafurka, and how he's a blogger from Canada, and he has quite a gift for being able to spell out certain distinctions or give us a way of seeing something more clearly, something that can be a bit complex. He can easily simplify. He has a gift for that. And the particular tool I most often use from Paul Chafurka is what he calls his stages of awareness. And last week was the first and most densely populated level of his stages of awareness, and he calls it dead asleep. I call it the business as usual paradigm, to be just a little less judgmental, I think. Although I have plenty of judgments about the business as usual paradigm. Really briefly about last week and about the business as usual paradigm, what he's asserting and what I'm asserting is that we are all immersed in the business as usual paradigm, whether we want to be or not, and we have been so since birth. And no matter how cool and how much meditation we've done and how many practices we have, we spend most of our days saturated in business as usual. And if we're really, really lucky, whether it's our own calling or something knocks us into the next level, whether we like it or not, we spend most of our days, and if we're lucky to be able to be bumped out of that to this next level that he would call one problem. So there's some one problem that gets your attention and knocks you out of that kind of, well, I would call it a kind of a stupor or a dream state. You're just talking, there was a number of y'all have mentioned that. And last week, I was using the example of a family who lives in Houston, Texas, and really don't give a darn about the environment. They don't care about climate change. They just have a certain political orientation and a certain social orientation, that none of that stuff matters. They're just living their lives. The hurricane comes along and they find themselves sleeping in the high school gym with 50 other families and wondering how the hell are we going to get out of this? This is a wreck. And each of the people there likely have had the same amount that most people have had of training of self-regulation and co-regulation, skills training, resilience skills training at the level of individual and family. And these, self-regulation and co-regulation are a little clinical sounding. It's basically, how do I bring myself back to that sense of center and home within myself? Or at the very minimum, how can I just get my awareness back in my body in a simple way? Because if I'm in that kind of disaster setting, chances are I will be dissociating. I'll be out of my body just to cope. Is this communicating? Is this, just give me a nod if this makes sense, or perhaps you've had experiences of this in your own life. So that is the level I would call first aid level resilience training. And that is, again, Paul Chafurka calls it one problem. Here today, we're going into the next level. And that next level is just by chance. If I'm the father of that family and I've learned these very basic skills and I can see, wow, I was in shock those first 3 days. I couldn't even be present with my family. And what I've got to do is I've got to learn those skills. There's some things I want to learn so that if anything happens like this again, I'm going to be able to be more present for the people I love. Is this communicating?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's oftentimes what nudges a person into that next level. Something I should mention that Paul Chafurka makes brilliantly clear in his model is this business as usual population is imagine a sphere that's almost as big as the Earth. It's just massive sphere representing the vast majority of human beings on the planet. You know, let's just say 7 billion of the 8 billion of us.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to the next level, this one problem level. There's something that's knocking us awake to realizing there are skills and capacities I want to expand in order to be more present in life and in order to be more of service to the people I love in life. That's a much smaller ball. In other words, a much smaller number of people. Let's say that's, if there's 1 billion people left, let's say it's perhaps a half of that. So 500 million people. I think that's really high, but just bear with me. It is so much smaller a ball, so much smaller a number of people on the planet have even come to this level of engagement. It is from here, there are other smaller numbers of people that we're going to get to in the third and fourth introductions to this work. This is where the largest area of work and practices and related wisdom traditions and so on. This is where people who want to really get their hands into the dirt here and really get to work. This is where you and I would get to work, sit in circle together, and your practices will be different than mine. But the gift is we can easily sit in circle together and be of support with one another. When the time comes for that, when I need some help to see aspects in my practices that I cannot see myself. Are y'all familiar with the notion of shadow work? Yeah.
No, sorry.
That's fine. There's tremendously important greater body of work and contributed to by many extraordinary people. And the essence of it is that we as human beings, how we are configured, that there are often aspects of ourselves that we are not proud of or we're not willing to see as a part of ourselves. There's a part of humanity or a part of my inner workings that I so don't want to be present to, that I'm so unwilling to acknowledge, that they become shadow, they become invisible to me. They are no less real, but I have taken them out of my view. And when they're out of view like that, much mischief can occur.
Yes.
Extraordinary levels of mischief can occur. If you can imagine that, now blow that out to the level of all of humanity. The assertion is that we have a number of collective shadows. And perhaps we could just take a minute to express what are some of the collective shadows that appear to be quite active right now. Anybody want to just throw out some suggestions? I would throw out politics on a dozen different levels are shadow driven right now.
Most people not in my backyard, NIMBYism.
Right, right.
Build your refuge for the difficult people the other side of town, not in my back garden.
Right on.
I suppose the sense of the individual being separate from everybody else.
Right.
Just doing things for oneself and not for anybody else.
Yeah, if people are innately separate, says my inner workings, then I'm separate from you and I don't like you and I want what you've got, so I'm going to take it, and so on and so on. The shadow dynamics are pretty unflattering at every level. but desperately important at this time to be aware of. So let me just back from the shadow focus for the moment, and just realize that we've gotten ourselves from this first aid level resilience, where the theme is, the target is, how quickly can we get ourselves back on our feet and back to normal. That's the motto of someone who's in that first aid level resilience zone. Has that been a familiar topic or a familiar phrase that we might have heard in these past couple of years? How soon can we get back to normal? Yeah, so that you can tell that's where we were collectively. So here in this zone, we start to take on what is it we could do to expand our ability to be, our capacity to be present in the face of larger and larger stressors. And one thing that I do to answer that question for myself is I go back to the simple questions I asked myself when I wrote the book, The Impossible Conversation, which is, what got us into these predicaments? What got us here? And the answer kept coming back and keeps coming back, that we've disconnected. We've disconnected from all the primary sources of meaning and relationship in a human life. I know that's a bold assertion, and we only have a few more minutes left in this time, so just take it on as a thought experiment, if you will. And if that is so, if you can carry that with me as a thought experiment together, what would we be able to do from the different walks of life we walk? What can each of us do that would have us get out of bed in the morning and feel a sense of purpose, a sense of, I can actually, it's within reach for me to reclaim some of that meaning, some of that relationship. And what I call all of these practices, everything that I've just said, I call those practices of reconnection. If you chose to kind of dip your toe in the water and do as Celine was saying, you know, she's been sampling little pieces of this body of work over these past few weeks, and it makes a tremendous difference in my experience if I can sit in circle with other people and we all know that we share an interest in expanding our capacity to be present in the face of whatever the heck is coming, whenever it's coming. And we also want to be of service, of greater service to the people we love. Those seem to be pretty consistent goals that people want to reach for when they get to this zone. And so that's the work, that is the atmosphere that we're talking about creating in this middle zone, having stepped up from that first aid level resilience. And we've expanded ourselves, we've cracked open to the possibility that we don't have to just go back to normal, that there might be something we could actually do to expand ourselves and expand each other if we move into this zone together. So this is a zone of really, no kidding, rolling up our sleeves and getting to work with one another. And again, you're extremely likely that your practices will be different than mine, but we can very definitely be of service to one another when we sit in circle together and share and exchange and support in the name of expanding those capacities. One thing I'd be curious about, if each of you would just take a look and share, if you will, what are some of the signs within your own system, within your own relationships, within your own friendships and so on, particularly in the past few years, have you noticed any symptoms, any signs of when you lose your center, when you're knocked off center, or when your friends or your loved ones, your family members, when they've knocked off center, have you noticed what kind of behaviors show up? What kind of stress behaviors might show up?
I'm really happy to answer that if you like, because
Yeah.
I've just had an interesting realization. For me, I regress to behaving like somebody that I'm not. Now, that might sound odd, but because I know myself very well after 50 odd years of doing inner work,
Yeah.
and I know inside I'm good, as we all are, but I know it, I feel it. When I behave jealous, vindictive, mean, you name it, behaviors, because I so know it's what I call, I'm not being myself. Oh my God, I picked up the way those people are behaving and I'm behaving just like them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then I have to have a period of inner work to get me back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's very lucky because I've already discovered I'm good inside. Whereas if you haven't yet discovered you're good inside and you've let maybe a cross parent or a cross teacher once tell you you're horrible, you're bad, and you've taken it on board, then it's a really difficult thing, because then when you're acting in these awful ways, it's like, oh, well, that's just who I am. No, it isn't. You've lost yourself.
Yeah.
So I love going back to this concept of actually inside me, I'm good. And so you. So, I mean, I'm not no different from anybody else. It's just like after years of study, I know this is true.
Yeah.
And so I do know when I'm being off. And I'm quite often off lately, but I'm working at it.
Well, Emma Mary, thank you for your honesty. And I think you've pointed out a couple of really important pieces that for all too many people, we really don't yet have a clear location for and really ability to articulate what is this center inside myself. I don't know what's really true for me. I'm taking so many cues from the outer world, constantly impacted. I call it the fire hose of input from the outside world that we live in now. And without a center, that can be extraordinarily disruptive or destructive. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have something you'd like to share about? Yeah.
Me, yeah.
Please.
Yeah. No, when you're saying that, I'm thinking your question about the center and center of people around me. I don't mean to say it, Northern Ireland's all bad or stuff, but I grew up in a traumatic environment. Like, trauma happened at an early age, and my family would have had a lot of trauma. Then Northern Ireland itself had a lot of trauma. And the truth is that sense of center is only coming into me the more, even in the last short while, the more I own my trauma, the more I own my truth. Like, I land in my center, weirdly. And this is kind of like why I feel so much around me. We're all living outside center. I feel that there's so many people in my locality, in my area, that, well, I mean, that's the capitalist society as well, like, your interest in what your center is, what you next can buy, and what you next want, and what new electronic gadget you can get, and how you can be one up on your neighbor, things like that. So that's all part of what that's not your center. But I knew it wasn't my center all my life, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted, but I had absolutely no idea that there was a place that was real underneath this grief and this. I didn't know that place, and I'm only beginning to find that place as I begin to process the grief. That's about as much as I can say.
Great, thank you. So is there anybody else who would like to speak about that sense, that felt sense of when you're off center, or you've noticed the people that you're close to, they're off center? How, if there's a bold example of what that feels like to be either in your body or that you around others. And Carol, I think I saw
Yeah,
you.
well, I think I noticed that I when I can be overwhelmed or off center is more, I become more negative, and definitely catastrophizing, you know, and living sort of more overwhelmed and not taking in the moment, and appreciating what is now and the good things. You know, I find I forget the gratitude that I have right now. And I find the solution is going back to source, whatever source is for me, higher power, you know, inner strength, wisdom, guidance, you know, and it seems that does give me comfort. So that's more where I'm heading, and try to remind myself that I don't know it all. So thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I just can't believe how quickly this time has gone. And I will create a hard stop and ending point for anyone who needs to end at the top of the hour. And I'll happy to stay on for at least another 10 minutes for anyone who would like to stay longer. If there's conversation threads that you'd like to continue further. I particularly, Emma Mary, I really particularly appreciate you pointing out that lack of awareness that I, as an average person, don't even know what it would be like to be aware of a center. I don't know what I don't know about having a center. I'm literally unaware. And that is such a predominant condition. I just appreciate you saying that, because it's hard to overstate the cost of that to a functional society. I mean, just we can bring it down to a functional family. If each of us don't have a sense of center in ourselves that we can settle our system into, when we can bring ourselves into a settled place in the center of our experience volitionally, that's a gift. And that is what co-regulation is. When we do that together, that's co-regulation. And that's a huge kind of the beating heart of this practices of reconnection work that's at the center of all we're doing here in this living resilience thing. Please. Yeah.
Can I just I wanted to go back to Celine, what she said, that she said it sounds as if it's odd, but I'm finding my center through understanding my trauma. And I would say spot on. And I'd say that we are all traumatized, but don't know we are. So those of us who are a bit more traumatized than most people, we end up going, something wrong here, I need some help. And then that's the start of our journey home. So yes, absolutely, owning the trauma. Owning what is difficult will sort us on the journey of finding the right people and finding our way home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very nicely said. Yeah.
I want to say something here,
Please.
because I have a lot of things I would say, but I just want to bring this up because I feel like language, how we language things, words create the world. And I want to say, let's move away from the idea that we own our trauma. Let's recognize it. It's not ours. It's what we've experienced. Because when we say we own it, then we make it a part of ourselves in a way. We're trying to move it out. We're trying to move through it. So I feel like it would behoove us to be really mindful of how we lay claim to our experiences in the language that we use. I've got ancestral trauma and family trauma and life trauma, and it doesn't own me. I don't own it. And I just think there's a distinction to be made about how we identify ourselves. I mean, that's part of the centering.
Yeah.
At the center of myself, I am not my trauma.
Yeah, really clear, Lynn. Thank you so much for saying what you're saying. And I'm reminded of remember I was mentioning this Paul Chafurka scale, and we were in the first one, the largest one last week. This one's substantially smaller group of people. And then next week, smaller still. And then the final week, the tiniest group of all. And it's in that kind of rarefied environment where people are really willing to do this kind of inner work, make the kind of distinctions that you and Emma, Mary, and really all of y'all are sharing. These are rarefied, unfortunately rare, levels of distinction, levels of discernment in our systems that we can share with one another. And how you may hold it, Lynn, might be very different than how I hold it, but there's this flowing back and forth of, I call it an energetic exchange, because that's how it lives for me in the kind of relationship with these different dimensions of trauma, for instance, live in an energetic fashion, which is something that even just saying those words, I'm a little wary because it takes a while to describe or define what I'm trying to say. Suffice it to say at this point, there's in those rarefied zones, what I've seen with some people who sincerely take on these early practices of reconnection, quite possibly the ones that Emma Mary's been talking about, having been engaged with for 50 plus years. You know, that it makes a difference when a person takes those on seriously, when each of us can look at what the things we've taken on. Like Celine was sharing, you know, as I do this more, I find myself landing in my center. That's worth mentioning. That's an exceptional kind of benchmark. So these rarefied realms unfortunately involve fewer and fewer people because they take serious work. The work of letting go of the business as usual paradigm, letting go of that which is comforting, that which is all that most of us have ever known, all that we thought, you know, certainly when I was raised with this, all of this is never in question. It's just a question of how well you do. How far do you want to reach to get that job or that great attainment in life and so on. I'm just going to take a moment to slow down, and because I have so few minutes with you and I have so much I would love to share with you about these advanced practices levels. What I can say is that we do have access to extraordinary, ubiquitous inner resources, like we all can access them. They're virtually well, they're very, very difficult to reach from the business as usual level. And they take some serious work in this level of practices of reconnection. But what I've seen is those who take those practices seriously, that they more and more have access to what some people call the implicit. Some people call it a unity consciousness, a consciousness that is something that we are all immersed in at a far larger scale than even the immersion of the business as usual. It is actually, in my experience, an inner resource that has a chance, more than a chance, of fueling us no matter what we face in these incredibly challenging times. I'm hoping that this has at least mapped out a bit of a progression. We haven't talked much about, so what are some of these practices of reconnection? I think we would, all of us could list off 20 well-known practices that help us connect with other people, or connect with our deeper self, or connect with the earth. Perhaps we could all look into the earth listening offerings that Emma Mary's doing through deep adaptation. We are at a stopping point, the official stopping point. So for anybody who has a hard stop and you need to go, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I will plan on keeping this window open for another 10 or so minutes. Would love to have any of you who would like to stay and perhaps deepen a bit more of the detail in any of the pieces that have caught your interest. And I hope that I might see you again, perhaps in these last 2 segments. We will be talking about the advanced levels of those practices of reconnection and accessing that, the implicit, accessing those inner resources that have been so well known in the wisdom traditions for thousands of years, and that now are called on more than ever. So is there anybody who needs to check out right now, needs to end? Okay, Celine, you want to say anything?
No, thank you very much. I'll be back next week, but it's been really informative. And thanks everybody for being there.
And Celine, I don't know if I've introduced you to the embodiment manifesto. I'm going to point it out to you. So I posted it in the chat, and it is a remarkable piece of writing in which Philip Shepard talks about what is this whole inner realm and this concept of center. I've never heard such an exquisite layout of that, and it's quite brief and beautiful. So you might want to check that out.
Dean, I got in contact with that, and first time I spoke with you, that was the thing that got me to contact you.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Philip Shepard, the embodiment.
That's great.
Yep, definitely. Everybody, thank you. See you next week.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you. Bye.
Bye.
So Joe, I noticed that we've had you leave and come back a couple times. I hope your mechanical stuff is going okay. Are you able to check in a little bit?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I was having some technical problems.
Okay.
We need more of these combinations and connections. I think, it's been said over and over that the new Buddha is the Sangha. So again, finding your conscious communities across time and space is very important.
Yeah.
I've swimming in this space for many years. I've been friends with Michael Dowd of post-Doom fame for many years, and the information, like the stages you mentioned before about Paul Chafurka, we go from ignorance through various stages of awareness, and can be overwhelming. But I've been a long practitioner of Buddhism, you know, Tibetan. I find that that is a valid pathway, you know, to ground myself and thus, you know, realize my emptiness and thus my interconnectedness simultaneously. Beautiful. And that my do make a difference, whatever my actions may be.
Great. Well, thank you for that introduction of yourself, Joe. I really appreciate it. It was well said. Is there, I'm curious if there is anyone else on the screen that something may have sparked you, or you've had an insight or something that you resonate with this idea of practices of reconnection. Is there some practice or practices that you've put into your life that has been particularly fruitful in terms of expanding your capacity to be present in what to me seems like truly chaotic times? You know, collectively, we don't have a center. We are in the midst of a whirlwind, a hurricane of just political and cultural insanity. I'm curious if you have found any particular inner resources or practices that have been particularly useful for you.
I have maybe a practice, all right, certainly, that I have been attempting with a while, and it's kind of to come back to myself as such when I find myself going off with my thoughts into the world or getting annoyed or whatever. The teachings of Ramana Maharshi, I have found very centering, just as very much being an observer of your everyday life, I suppose, and how you are reacting to the world and to people around you. But when you find yourself going off, to kind of pull yourself back, or and how you do that is by kind of, I suppose, with practice, you find yourself going off with your thoughts, and you kind of ask yourself, to whom are these thoughts occurring? And then I say, like, to me, myself, I am having these thoughts. And then I pursue the I by questioning, who am I? And then you must hold on to that. There is a sense of centeredness there, actually. There's a space that kind of opens up. And then if you can ask yourself a further question in that space, it is, what is the source of this I think, well, but it is very grounding. I have found it a great practice. It brings me back to myself. And you talk about a center. I do feel that is all of our center, possibly. That is what that is. I don't know, maybe that sounds a bit mad, but these teachings have been very good for me anyways, and they've come after a lot of years of reading and thinking and etc. So yeah, I find that helps.
Yeah, it sounds like reading.
Three-part question. Yeah, three-part question, but the question is not to be answered. It's more to dissipate the thinker of the thoughts as such, and to catch them out. So yeah, I don't know if that resonates with anybody, or maybe somebody might find that helpful. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, thank you.
But not to get caught up in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you. Carol, and then Lynn.
You go ahead, Lynn.
I guess I'm, boy, I hope I don't sound cavalier here. What I would call my practice has been very hard won. It's happened over time, a long time. And two things I want to say is that I feel like when we talk about our center, it's still in a very egoic sense of I, me, my, as though my center does not include the whole. And I feel like that's how we lost our centers. And you said in the beginning, you know, when we lost our connection. But my practice is this. I joke that I have tattoos. I don't, but I joke. This wrist says, it is what it is. And this wrist says, get over it. The things keep coming. They keep coming and they keep coming. And in my resistance can create so much. I mean, it is my resistance that creates more problems than it ever solves. And I've had to really, I mean, I'm telling you, that saves my life. It is what it is. Get over it. And then I move on. And I recognize that my center it's all one center, you know, it's the whole. And I wish we could stop compartmentalizing things so much.
Got it. Lovely. I love how animated you are. You just got lit up when you were giving us that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It works.
It does. I get it. I get it. And Carol, would you like to say something?
Yeah, well, I just thought you're asking, so I'm going to share. I think what I'm using, and I'm not solid in it because I'm learning and I'm trying to be open as well. I like what you said, Lynn, though. What I'm practicing, and I'm hoping I'm on the right track, is I am in a 12-step program. So, and I also am following the Christian faith. So as Thomas Keating had as a prayer, or it's not really a prayer, you're not using words, called the centering prayer. So I use it, and I have defined my source or my power out, not outside myself, but within. And that's the like it says in the book, the big book, which says an unsuspecting inner resource, which I feel is the universal creator of the universe, and which is love, and I am a part of that, and everyone else is a part of that, and so I try to sit in the presence, maybe hopefully for 20 minutes a day at least, and connect, and try to connect through the day too, that I am not alone and that I'm okay. And there is, I love what you said though too. It's I'm accepting reality is what you were sort of saying, and I love that. It is what it is, and get over it. It's not that I'm pouting about it, but I'm trying to get into acceptance of reality, and reality is that higher power. So anyway, that's kind of it. It's all mushy, but it's kind of where I'm heading. Thanks.
Well, somehow I didn't hear much mushiness in there. That was pretty clear from my perspective. We're coming on the last couple of minutes of this extended section of our time together. And I've got to tell you, this is one of my favorite conversations, is how we resource ourselves. Where do we reach into our experience, into our world, to resource ourselves in the face of these challenges? So I feel very fed by and very appreciative for our time together. Thank you so much for sharing your own practices as well. I'm hoping that you can come in these next couple of Saturdays, or perhaps join us in other gatherings that we do here on a regular basis. It's just been lovely. And Emma Mary, it looks like you want to say something.
Yes, I just have to go, and I have to say thank you so much. That's brilliant and lovely to meet you all. Thanks, Dean. I'll be back.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
All right. Any last minute words from anyone?
No, I thought it was good, and I hope to see everybody next week. Thanks.
Great. Look forward to sharing at the next level. Can't wait to see what the next level is going to bring. Yeah.
Bring your best to everything.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you all again for coming.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Bye. No.
Okay.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that it feels strange for me to actually say that to people, that is actually what I practice, because I would never actually. I don't know. Nobody really would know that. Only my own family, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, but yeah, that's weird. But probably a good thing, I'm sure.
I think so. I think it's a good thing when we can share with one another what expands our capacity for presence, to be present in these times. I think that's a good sharing, and I sure appreciate you sharing it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Bye all.
Thanks. Take care.